I call the general meeting to order. It's 7:05 now. City Council Owen Sound, obviously, January 26, 2015. If you're watching at home and you want to follow the agenda, go to owensound.ca, click the where you want to live button, then click council meeting. That will come up under that, and then under that there's minutes and agendas, and work your way through to 2015 and you'll get the date. And I'll try and follow along in the numbers, so if you're watching on TV or trying to follow the agenda, you'll be able to see the same things that we've seen. So we're moving the regular meeting into the regular meeting, and starting at number 3 with faith blessing, or moment of silent reflection. I think we have Reverend Graham Bland here from St. George's. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council, ladies and gentlemen.
Can I get you to push the button there, Graham? Sorry.
Press to speak.
There we go. Thank you.
I want to offer this evening an adaptation of a reading from Psalm 15, which was translated by Stephen Mitchell, and which I've tried to adapt so that it's accessible to people of all faiths or no faith, and then follow that by an attempt at a blessing with the same intention. It's about leadership. Who can be trusted with power? Or who may act on behalf of others? Those with a passion for justice, who speak the truth from their hearts, who have let go of selfish interests and have grown beyond their own lives, who see the wretched as their own family and the poor as their own flesh and blood. They alone are impartial and worthy of the people's trust. Their compassion lights up the whole earth, and their kindness endures forever. So may we be trustworthy in the exercise of power. May we act for the benefit of others with a passion for justice. May we speak the truth from our hearts and be freed from selfish concerns, so that we grow beyond the narrowness of our own lives and make it our principal concern to serve the well-being of the people of this community and of the world. May we regard the wretched of the earth as our kinfolk and acknowledge the poor as members of our own immediate family. By our impartiality, may we show ourselves worthy of the people's trust. May we carry compassion within us like a lantern to light our path. And may kindness be our watchword and our guide. May this be true for us. And thank you for the invitation to be here tonight. Best wishes to you in your work.
Great. Thank you. So we're down to number 4 on the agenda, which is additional items. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. I just wonder if we could get an update from staff on the discussions with our neighbors about the recreation streamlining proposal.
Thank you. Others? Councillor Thomas.
Yes, Your Worship. I have a brief item about the transit terminal.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none. Great, thank you. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. I disclosed a pecuniary interest on a matter on the in-camera agenda as it involved my employment.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? No? Great, thank you. Confirmation of minutes, so 6A.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dodd, that the minutes of a council orientation session held January 12, 2015, as printed, be adopted.
All in favor? That is carried. Thank you.
Your Worship, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dodd, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held January 12, 2015, as printed, be adopted.
Great, thank you. All in favor? That is carried. So 6C.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dodd, that the minutes of the public meeting respecting development charges held January 12, 2015, as printed, be adopted.
Great, thank you. All in favor? That is carried. And we're down to number 7, resolution moving council into committee of the whole.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dodd, that City Council now and go to Committee of the Whole to consider public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lemon. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. So we're at Committee of the Whole. Number 8, I don't believe we have any public meetings. And number 9A is a deputation from Jackie Ralph and Joachim Ostertag, and I think we have a stand-in for Jackie, being somebody named Colleen Purdon. I don't know if anyone knows Colleen. Welcome.
Thank you
welcome
very much.
back, perhaps.
Yes, lovely to be back. We have a presentation for the Grey Bruce One World Festival, and Joachim Ostertag, my partner. We've been
And my
working.
stand-in, Colleen Purdon.
Jackie, unfortunately, wasn't able to be here tonight, so I got a call if I could come. I'm very happy to be able to do this. I'll just, I'll just have to make the machine work, right? There we go. And I just click it, Brianna, to make it go down. All right. Our Grey Bruce One World Festival, we have a theme this year called We Are All Neighbors. And this is our annual event for people who, oh, I clicked it and nothing happened, Brianna, so what now? Oh, wasn't it? Try again. Okay. So this is a project of the Inclusive Communities Committee. And this year, our partner is Community Living Owen Sound and District, who are acting as our sponsoring organization. Oops. I never said I was good with technology. So we began work in 2005. This was a committee that came together to address racism and discrimination in Grey and Bruce County. We've been working really hard. We started doing rather large conferences called Weaving Our Communities. One was hosted at NAWASH, one at the Outdoor Education Center. We did a series of 10 training workshops addressing racism and discrimination in different workplaces. And for the past 5 years, we've put on the One World Festival right outside of City Hall in the Market Square. And we have a website now, www.greybruceoneworldfestival.org, and there's lots of information there. Oops, okay. So the purpose of the One World Festival, we really want to build respectful and good relationships, develop inclusive communities. And so we've kind of declared the month of May as the Grey Bruce One World Festival. And we're encouraging people all across the 2 counties to do different activities. So the objectives are to engage diverse groups, businesses, schools, agencies, and communities. And we want to raise awareness about the diversity in our community. Sometimes we see ourselves as rather white community, not much cultural heritage background, or a very narrow look. But when you look clearly at Grey Bruce, there's an amazing diversity in our community. We also want to build the skills and capacity that let us live together in a really good way, and celebrate the diversity we have and learn about the one-day festival. Yes, why don't you do that? To date, we've had 5 One World, well, this will be our 5th One World Festival, and every year we've had more people. Last year we had about 1,000 people come to the Market Square. We have attendance from all kinds of people in Owen Sound in the region, and we have displays and presentations that really look at the different communities and cultures and groups in our community in a very creative way. Lots of music, dance, drama, poetry contests, and presentations, all on the themes of diversity. But we think the most important outcome really is that we're growing not only community engagement but also support for celebrating diversity. And there's amazing enthusiasm and dialogue. Last year, our city manager came and said nobody could work at City Hall because there was such a lot of stuff going on next door. So that's a good sign. And there's a lot of learning happening too. I think for young people who've been coming for several years now. Every year they're learning more about the people and the groups in our community. And we have lots and lots of people saying, do it again. So that's what we're going to do. Here's a couple pictures from the One World Festival. On the lower left, there's May Eep teaching international folk dancing. Some musicians and dancers at the top. Our opening singers, we have a very rich participation in the One World Festival from our First Nations and Aboriginal people with Purdon and the Meades. There's Gary Weinger playing klezmer music with a very strong Jewish tradition in our community, and school children singing. There's lots of participatory stuff for kids and adults to do. There's a mandala at on the screen, and our diversity rainbow, and all kinds of projects you can see at the top left. A young child doing some coloring with a young Métis woman. We celebrate the diversity in our community and also the history and cultural groups, and also there's opportunities for dialogue. I really love this picture. It's Vera Jones from Cape talking about the drum with a young child, and they've come every year, she and her husband, to talk about First Nations history and traditions. And community engagement is a really big part of the One World Festival. It's an opportunity for many different communities and groups to get together, but also to meet each other in a different way. And many people here will know Blaine Courtney, who's been a big supporter and participant at the One World Festival. And finally, learning about other cultures and other traditions. Last year, we did a project on the Chinese history in Grey Bruce, and that set up a school classroom that would be like a classroom in China. So there's the children there seeing an arquebus and how mathematics is done in a Chinese classroom.
Okay. As you can see and hear, Colleen wears many hats with lots of passion in the community. So this is for 2015. As Colleen said, the name this year is We Are All Neighbors, which is true. We are all neighbors, if we want or not. We are neighbors of each other. This is the 5th annual One World Festival. It's on May 22nd, 2015, at the Market Square, 9:30 to 2:30. So beware of the traffic jams through kids that walk through town. And you might not get into City Hall that day. You might have to be out there. 25 educational displays and presentations, children's crafts and activities at the market, music, poetry, dance, and drama under the tent. There are traditional games in the market square with speakers, storyteller, puppetry at the library, art display at the Tom, library exhibits throughout Grey Bruce. So the center of Owen Sound will be very busy. The Inclusive Community Committees respectfully request that the City Council, that you please support the aims and activities of the committee, that you allow the Inclusive Communities Committee to hold the festival on city property, including the Owen Sound Farmers Market and the adjacent city parking lot on May 22nd.
Go
May I go
ahead,
on?
we'll come back. Yeah.
Okay. So the Inclusive Communities Committee respectfully requests, okay, oops.
You have to go back.
What happened? Oh,
See, I'm not the only one.
yes. It only goes forward. That's how City Council is. The City Council is a forward.
That's the second.
Okay, yeah, good, sorry. Pushed too fast. Okay, and we also respectfully request that City Council allows for the erection of a tent in the parking lot and waive the building permit fee as the city's contribution to this celebration of diversity, and that the council supports the event in practical ways such as publicity, attendance by council and city staff, help with garbage and parking issues. Move on.
Go ahead.
Okay. So we thank our sponsors For instance, Citizenship and Immigration Canada, Bruce Power, Elementary School, Teachers Federation of Ontario, Blue Water Local, and so on. As you can read on the list, there's a lot of support in the community and in Grey Bruce. And thanks to our community partners, Community Living, Owen Sound and District, CMAJ, Grey Bruce, the Men's Program, which I'm working for, Brian Minelli, and Colleen Purdon and Associates. And biggest thank you to all the performers and presenters at the Grey Bruce One World Festival, who demonstrated the potential and power of an inclusive, diverse, and caring community. And to everyone who attended and made each year's event such a great success. So what is needed still? We need more volunteers to join the Inclusive Communities Committee planning. Yes, we are here. We need diverse groups to showcase food, artifacts, stories, language, and history at the festival. Performers, like musicians and actors, puppets, poetry, and so on, with the theme of diversity and inclusion. Funding support, community support, and outreach to include a more diverse range of attendees. So if anybody knows somebody who has something to offer, please contact us. So how do we create that positive, respectful community where everybody and every person feels valued with a difference? Answer. We need to be more comfortable with the uncomfortable and less comfortable with the too comfortable. The greatest enemy to human potential is your comfort zone. And I guess every city council knows that because you are sometimes out of your comfort zone. And we appreciate that. I'm not different from you. I'm different like you. So thank you very much. And we hope we see you at the festival. So please join us.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Lemon, I think, had his hand up 8 minutes ago.
Yeah, well, what I was going to do, in the past, we've given support to the One World Festival, and I would make a motion that we do support it again as we have in the past, and give the services that we have given before. It's rather interesting that when we talk about cultural diversity, because we have historically been a very diverse community. At one time, 1/3 of our population was of color, and they've been celebrating that diversity within the community for the last 150 years. So it's an old tradition being to include others, and I think it's wonderful, so that's my motion.
Good, thank you. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship, and I wonder if Councillor Lemon would take a friendly amendment. He's right, this has happened in the past. If we could ask, in the past, we've asked for a staff report back just on some of these particulars, especially with the new members here not knowing what might have happened in the past. It might be appropriate if it would be a friendly amendment to ask for a staff report back. Support it in principle and ask for a report back on the particulars.
Yeah, I will accept that. I realize that a lot of us know, or some of us know, what went on historically. And if we get a support in principle, ask for a staff report, and then we'll finalize it at that time. But these are just for the new members of council. We have supported this in a similar way in the past.
And Councillor Kepke.
Thank you so much for your presentation. My question was, what have we done in the past? But I also wanted to personally thank you for the efforts that your organization puts into a cause so worthy as this.
Thanks very much.
Councillor Gregg.
I too would like to commend and thank you for the festival that is put on in the community. And I also wonder if we can utilize that day as a day to promote walking or biking to work as well for city employees that day to lessen any parking issues that would occur.
Walk and bike to the festival, yeah, it's good.
Councillor, Deputy Mayor Wright.
That's okay. Thank you. Nice to see Colleen here. And I encourage all of you to come to the World Festival because it is a lot of fun. And everything that we saw is there, and it's good fun to be there. And I know I've always enjoyed it, and it's good.
Great. Anyone else? And to Councillor Lemon's motion, all in favor? There we go, carried. Thank you very much, welcome back.
Yes, thanks very much also for the support of the city. We would never have had a One World Festival without the help of council and staff, so
I
thanks
got the
very much.
impression the two of you have maybe presented things together before, I don't know. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Next matter is 9B, and it's Mr. David McLaren. He's presenting on Peace and Justice, Grey Bruce Final Report on Precarious Work.
Thank
Welcome.
you, Your Worship and Council, for giving us a hearing tonight. Peace and Justice, I don't know whether you know very much about the group, but it's formed, sort of sprang up, I guess, in year 2000, 2001, and basically a bunch of citizens from the area decided they would get together and look at and talk about issues of peace and social justice. And in doing that, they have put on a number of forums. Foreign affairs, art and politics, Aboriginal issues, Wasnaban forums, and most recently, Meta Spencer, a foreign political professional advisor, came to speak at Owen Sound, and we also put on a couple of forums on precarious work with some experts who have been dealing with precarious work for a long, long time. One in Owen Sound and another one in Walkerton. I'd like to, if I could maybe get somebody to pass these out to the councillors, if that's okay. They're just a sort of an addendum to what you have. I'm going to be working from the report that you probably have on your computers, and we'll go through that very, very quickly. But this I wanted to point out because it's now on the net, and I wanted to point out on the flip side of it, you will see some early reviews of the report. Some of those folks you might recognize. We've been very careful, I think, and very thorough in the kind of research that we did with this report to make sure that we were getting both sides of the political spectrum. And speaking of political spectrums, I should probably mention that Peace and Justice takes care to point out that we are a nonpartisan group. And yes, we have NDP people amongst us, and yes, we have Green people. We also have some Liberals. We probably have some Conservatives, although they're probably red Tories, which really makes them Liberals, but never mind. I'd like to also, there's two members of the committee that worked so hard on this here. Michael McLaren is here, and Colleen Purdon is here, and Bob Hope is here from Peace and Justice as well. So we all worked quite hard and quite long on this, and the report is really a conglomeration, if you like, of meetings that we've had, the open forums, the things we heard from people there. We talked with a number of candidates for municipal council during the election period. We sent out briefings, and some of you may have got those, to 200 of candidates who were running. We didn't hear very much back from them, and that's one of the reasons we're here tonight. What else did we do? We did a lot of research, as you'll see from the footnotes and the report, and we talked to a lot of people. And in fact, what I call our steering committee was made up of Deb Haswell, the former mayor here, Kathy Maskell, the former mayor in Hanover, some councillors, David Sherman from United Church, Dennis Howlett from Fair Taxation in Ottawa, and a number of other people. So we really did try to build a broad-based coalition of folks to look at this issue. We engaged with the Poverty Task Force. We engaged with the United Way, Grey and Bruce, and we engaged with the Public Health Unit. And you'll see references to their work in this report as well. We also had a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce, with Bert Lutstra, which was very interesting. And from that meeting came a real sensitivity to the need for economic development. And that has found its way into the report as well. I don't think there's any pre-assumptions in this report. There may be one, and that is that governments have a responsibility for creating conditions that will lead to the full participations of its citizens in the social and economic life of the community. So without any more introduction, let's go to the report itself. If you have it in front of you, I don't know whether you do or not. Do you, by the way? Okay. And you've all read all the footnotes? Okay. Good. Let's go to the first page. And I think I've covered all I want to say there, just to emphasize that we did consult with a broad base of folks in the area. And I'm just going to very quickly read the takeaways, not only for yourselves, but also for the audience, because I think it's important to understand exactly what we're trying to get across here. The Ontario economy has shifted from manufacturing to service, and the vast majority of new jobs being created are low-wage, precarious service jobs, especially in areas like Grey and Bruce. Among the consequences of this shift is that more people are falling out of the middle class and into working poverty. Another consequence is rising inequality, seen now as a problem by organizations across the political spectrum, from the Canadian Centre of Policy Alternatives to the Conference Board of Canada to the C.D. Howe Institute. Neither austerity programs, cutting wages and jobs, nor trickle-down agendas, lowering taxes and increasing grants to corporations, for example, are working. In fact, according to the research, they appear to be making things worse. The best response to the current economic situation is a multi-layered one, and this is important because it comes from a whole different set of groups. It comes from the OECD, it comes from the UN, it comes from some Canadian think tanks, and it seems they all seem to be saying the same thing. Restructure the tax system, provide direct benefits to those who are struggling, and create national and provincial strategies to build an innovative economy. Now, the idea is to raise taxes in a number of ways. You know, governments, it's easy to balance a budget if you cut everything. Not so easy in order to raise taxes, but to create an economy where more taxes are available to a government. And then use that tax revenue to increase the participation of the population in the workforce. So that's what the Nordic countries are doing. That's what the UN report on the innocenti, the child poverty, looks at. All those countries that managed to survive the recession and still protect children from poverty have done these three things. Restructure the tax and make sure that people aren't avoiding tax. Make sure once you get that tax revenue in, then you put it towards participation in the workforce. Training, making sure that children have a high education, and that includes early childhood education. Making sure people have access to university. Making sure young adults have access to training. And that three-pronged approach, if you like, taxes, universal programs, and particular programs for low-income people, seems to be working. So, just to continue, number 6 here, all orders of government should be involved, but some of the most innovative responses are coming from the municipal level, and we'll look at that a little bit later, particularly in housing, in legislating a living wage, and in economic development. Lower and upper tier municipalities in Grey Bruce also have a leading role, and you already have the authority under the Municipal Act to take this role on. The graph at the bottom of the page is the single bit of information that really stunned me. To think that in Canada in 2015, we have the 3rd highest rate of working age poverty among 17 developed countries was a bit of a stunner for me. And we have to be doing something wrong to be in that stage. All right. Rather than go through all of the information and all of the footnotes that go with it about making the case that precarious work is dangerous for the individual and for community, and it leads to inequality, let's instead go right to the solutions, and I'm going to turn to, I think it's your page 10. No, I'm going to turn to page 9. Sorry. What can be done? Well, as I said, we looked at a number of reports. And again, generally speaking, all of the reports that looked at solutions to this problem found that equity should be at the center of any national plan and include equitable access to education, decent housing, special needs, and other key areas. There are studies that have demonstrated that inequality is actually a drag on economies, not only national economies, but provincial economies and municipal economies. It erodes trust, it erodes social trust, and it erodes the well-being of the population. In fact, I saw a very interesting study that said that the more social trust you have, the more entrepreneurs you have. And as social trust goes down, the number of entrepreneurs you have in your community working on businesses drops as well. Renovate the existing tax systems to redistribute national wealth and make collecting tax revenues more efficient. And that would mean reducing the boutique tax credits that we seem to be so fond of. In other words, in fact, the Fraser Institute has come out with a report that says that all of the tax credits that we now in Canada have and serve different parts of the population are actually costing the government billions of dollars. And the Fraser Institute is not exactly a left-leaning think tank. The other thing is that I'm not sure that we need more stuff or more things for middle-class people. What we need is more people in the middle class. And there's an awful lot of us who are slipping out of the middle class and into the lower income brackets. Adopt universal programs, as I mentioned before, that would make access to health care and higher education or training easier and more affordable. Adopt programs that specifically target lower income groups, for example, retraining, money management, microloans. Wouldn't it be nice to get rid of the payday loan companies that are charging usurious rates for those who can't afford to have a bank account? And innovative affordable housing. You know, I would prefer to see a market solution to all of this. I would prefer to see unions and companies sort of duking it out in the back door, in the back rooms, as they used to do back in the golden age of capitalism, and coming up with a living wage for their workers. And that's what used to happen. And back in those days, it used to be that the wealthiest among us were taxed at the rate of 80 or 90%. The highest tax brackets were 80 or 90%. The highest tax brackets for corporations were up around 45%. And now they're down around somewhere between 20 and 15% in this country. And those high taxes were actually during the golden age of capitalism in the 1950s and the 60s. ETA, which is a US insurance company, a huge company, has decided to raise its lowest wage rates from whatever it is now to $16 an hour. And as you probably know, even the federal government has passed a little while ago, they passed a minimum wage of $10 an hour, but most workers in the service industry in the US are getting $8 an hour. So $16 an hour, and at $16 an hour, they figure that they can save $100 million a year just on employee turnover costs and get a better informed employee base at the same time and a more loyal employee base to boot. So if you look at, let me just say that some of the candidates that we briefed on precarious work said, yes, we see the problem, but tax reform and minimum wage legislation are the responsibility of other governments. What can we do? Well, actually, municipalities can do quite a bit. And in the United States, Seattle has raised its minimum wage to $15 an hour. So they're paying all their employees. Their contractors for city work have to pay $15 an hour. And not only that, but the private sector is legislated now by city ordinance to start paying $15 an hour. The private sector has 3 years to phase that in, and small businesses, that's for large businesses, and for smaller businesses, they have 5 years to phase it in. Excuse me. Los Angeles has picked that up, and they've now passed a city ordinance which obliges large hotels to pay their staff 15-something an hour. New Westminster in Canada has the first living wage policy. That living wage policy obliges the city to pay its employees over $20 an hour. That's the living wage in New Westminster. It also obliges its contractors to pay their employees $20 an hour, which is the living wage in New Westminster. The problem with minimum wages at $11 here in Ontario is that it still keeps, that level of wage still keeps people in poverty. And if you're still in poverty, that means that you are using public resources like healthcare, for example, or public subsidized housing. You're going to food banks, and you're going to be relying on subsidies for or help for your utilities, as many people do in this area for hydro during the wintertime. Francesca's here, and she can tell you more about that than I know. And the other thing, as you probably know, there's a huge lineup for subsidized housing in Grey and Bruce, and probably in Owen Sound as well. So that's another drain on the public purse. When you pay people enough money, that drain goes away, and you end up saving a lot of money on the public purse. In the US, where they monetize everything, and you can figure out how much people are spending or how much it's costing the healthcare system because it's monetized, or how much it's costing the food stamp system because it's monetized too, you can work it out, and they found that the fast food industry alone costs American taxpayers $7 billion a year. Walmart, all by itself, by not paying its members, its associates, and well enough, costs the U.S. taxpayer $2.5 billion a year. And you got to know that those low wages are costing us money as well. Well, we can't see it, partly because of our progressive tax system, partly because we don't have food stamps, and partly because we have a single-payer healthcare system. But I'm going back to the problem. I should be concentrating on the solutions. In Grey and Bruce, United Way has calculated the living wage for areas outside of Owen Sound to be $16.76 an hour, and inside Owen Sound to be $14.77, thanks largely to your transportation system. Now, research on those municipalities that have instituted fair wage policies or living wage policies has found that the benefits outweigh the liabilities. Remove costs from the public purse. You reduce turnover costs of employees for businesses, and there's more money that goes into the local economy. In BC, in Kamloops, BC, they enacted higher wages for construction workers, and project costs did not increase. In fact, the number of change orders, that's for work going over the bid price, decreased, and the dollar amount of all of those change orders was reduced. Now, I have to say a word about housing. We weren't really charged with looking at housing, but we did anyway because it's a major drag on municipal finances. And I have a background in co-op housing, cooperative housing in Toronto, and I just want to put a little word in about cooperative housing. Cooperative housing is revenue neutral. The rents and the mortgage is raised, of course, from the rents. The co-op is obliged by its contract to pay the mortgage on time every month, and it's paid from the rents. But there are some people who paid the market value rents, as I did, and others who did not, whose rents were subsidized. But because it's nonprofit, it all worked out so that the rents could be paid and the mortgage payments were upheld every month. Not only that, but the residents themselves took care of most of the repairs, except for those that required some expertise. So we were ensured that we had healthy housing to live in. Not only that, but there was terrific interaction in this community so that people were not socially excluded, no matter how poor they were. And social exclusion, as Monica would tell you, is one of the determinants of ill health. The other thing was that we exchanged skills. I learned an awful lot from the people who were next door to me, and many of them learned an awful lot from me. And we served together on committees, and we served together on the board of directors, because the co-op is run by its own members. And there was a skills exchange. I have seen people take themselves out of poverty and into working life simply because they picked up skills that they figured at the co-op. So I would like the council and its committees to consider co-op housing as part of its mix for social housing.
I'm just unfortunately interrupt you. I'm enjoying this because this reminds me of my lectures at U of A with Gordon Laxer. I'm getting some signals from people around. There's supposed to be a 10-minute limit, and you're at about 20 now. So if you can start to wrap up.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
If I hadn't looked at the clock, I would have bet you're at about 8 minutes from my perspective. But
that's what I felt like. All right, let me skip right to page 14, and I can wrap up very quickly. We have summary legal opinion, and I don't think it would be a very difficult chore for me to get legal opinion on paper that says that you already have the authority to do what we're recommending. You have, under the Municipal Act, Section 2, or Part 2, Section 11, there's a number of items there, and they're there on the page, that says that you have jurisdiction over those items, or those parts of your constituents. The recommendations that we are making to all the councils in Grey and Bruce, and I'm going to correct a typo as I go along here. The first one is that in this case, Owen Sound Council adopt a living wage policy for its own employees that is tied to an hourly rate established each year by the United Way of Bruce Grey, will apply to both full-time and part-time employees, and applies to persons who perform physical work on city premises and properties. I'm confident that the wages that you pay your employees now are probably well over the $14.77 an hour, and even the $15 an hour. The second one is that staff bring back information to council on the impact of implementing a living wage policy for services contracted by the municipality, not the County of Grey, and a recommendation for council consideration. And further, that council join with other councils in the Grey Bruce region to strike a task force to examine options and strategies for developing a creative and innovative economy. I didn't get a chance to lay some ideas about that on you, but if you look at the text, you will find that it requires not only paying attention and reinforcing tourism and agriculture, but also looking at what Richard Florida calls a creative economy, which must be attached to some post-secondary school education. And that finally, the council strike a committee of council to examine innovative alternatives to providing affordable housing, including co-op housing and rezoning and changing of any housing bylaws that need to be changed in order to allow for innovation. So I'm sorry for going over time, but that's it in a nutshell. I'll take any questions if there's time.
Councillor Gregg?
Thank you, Mayor Body. I do have a few points that I'm going to bring up on this subject because I do thoroughly enjoy it. In economics is something I quite enjoy. And I'm a small business owner. So a lot of this is quite pertinent to myself and to what I believe in the local economy. I have, as a business owner, always paid our employees above minimum wage, considerably above minimum wage. And I liken it to Craig Jelinek, who is the CEO of Costco. And he is supportive of the fair wage, but he cannot support it because he is unsure how it will affect small business or how small business can manage it. And we all know small business is the job creator and the backbone of the Canadian economy. It's a comprehensive subject. This is a subject that we could write 500, 800-page reports on. And many have been wrote, from the C.D. Howe Institute that you've referenced in your article to the Canadian Center for Policy Alternatives, and including the Center for Economic and Policy Research in the U.S. Many papers have been done on this subject. They are unable to show any correlation to hiring or wage increase, either positive or negative yet. And drawing back to the CTAC proposition is what it was known as in Seattle. This is something that was essentially an increase to minimum wage, where it was going to, for companies under 500 employees, they had 5 or 7 years to bring up to $15 an hour. For companies larger than 500, they had the 3 years. There was particular reasoning that it was driven forward through their city council. And there is a byproduct of that because it's only been implemented for a year. And I do have it's a parking receipt, which I wonder if the clerk can put it up because it is further to the presentation here. And what we're going to look at here is a parking receipt from a customer in a parking lot after implementation, which put a living wage as a tax in between the city tax and the sales tax. And on that $84 receipt, that's an 8.25% tax on the middle class. And we all know how the middle class is in Owen Sound. They are burned out, taxed out, and have no additional money for any further taxes. It is very challenging yet to read deeply into this. It's a very new initiative in Seattle. It's quite a new initiative everywhere. As it pertains to the recommendations brought forward, I would like to make a motion shortly, but I would like to say that council should never have wage decisions based solely on an arbitrary or unaccountable organization that is at arm's length to us, or would kind of somewhat hamstring us in terms of determining wages. I guess an example of that would be, what if down the line the Festival of Northern Lights wanted to hire some labor to help out with their cause? They would be mandated by this proposal to pay at least $15 an hour, which could be deemed by them too expensive and could result in the termination of such a great.
Councillor Greg, I'm
So,
going to get you to wind up too here.
if
so
I
don't
could
wanna
make
go
a
another
motion
20 minutes.
that council be thankful for the information provided, be thoughtful of the information in all our decision-making moving forward, including cooperative housing within committee, and that the report be received, is the motion.
The motion is to receive the report as presented. Councillor Kepke, I think I have you next, and then Deputy Mayor Wright.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I just was wondering what efforts your organization or other organizations have done provincially to get the minimum wage to be equal with the living wage for municipalities based on their services.
Our organization has not done that much. We're volunteers. We have a limited scope. But I do know that the unions, for example, are lobbying to have the minimum wage raised. The Canadian Centre of Policy Alternatives, the Ontario office, is doing the same thing. But you know, there's not much point in getting it even to $12, although that would help. Frankly, if you want to get money in people's pockets, and if you want to get working poverty off the books, off the public purse, then you really got to go for a living wage.
And the other part is, are you making this presentation to the county as well? And
Yes, we've booked into the Social Services Committee for Bruce County, or Grey County, and we're working on Bruce County as well.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Wright.
Thank you. Well, then, I think my question's been answered because the county looks after all the housing. So if you are booked into social services, you will be told that they do have a 10-year housing study or plan. It's in place. They did a study and the plan is in place. You'll hear all about that. And there are some really good things going on in this community. You probably have heard of Lutheran Social Services that has been looking for a piece of property. They do low-income housing, and there are some really good things going on in the community. I certainly support a living wage, and because I do think that is, I've sat on the Board of Health for 8 years, and I do know that's the whole idea of wellness is to have people living with a wage that will keep them in healthy community, healthy environment, and enough food in their belly to keep them going. And for that, they need to have a living wage. So, I mean, I certainly do support what you're doing here, and I think each of these resolutions needs to be taken by itself because they're all totally different. There is a motion on the floor, though, that we will have to deal with.
I think Councillor Thomas was next, and I think Councillor Dodd after that.
Thank you. Through your worship, I will not be supporting the motion. I think that certainly given the way the city of Owen Sound does business, I think I I would like to have staff come back with a 500 to 800 page report on the impact of the first two. I'm kidding. I would like a staff report on the first two recommendations for sure, to see what the potential impact could be on the city of Owen Sound. I think that a lot of work has gone into this, and I think the least we can do is at least take a deeper look at it and see whether in fact it's possible for us to support this.
Thank you. Councillor Dodd?
David, I'd just like to say thank you for coming today, and the entire Peace and Justice Grey Bruce organization. When I was growing up, I was with a single mother who had 2 jobs, worked from 9 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night, through retail and through worked at a restaurant at night. I understand the hardships of what it is to living on basically nothing to get through. There was myself and 2 older brothers. Of course, we wanted to all play sports during the time, so I understand it. I won't be in support of Councillor Gregg's motion either. I think that we owe it to you, and I think a living wage is, it's something that we definitely need to take a look at further. And like as Deputy Mayor Wright has mentioned here, we would need to break these down, but there are some of these recommendations that I think would be applied to what we could do here in the community. So I just want to say thanks again, and keep it up.
Councillor Lemon?
Now, I'm having problems with this because most of what you want has no jurisdiction within the municipality. Seattle may have been able to do that in American jurisprudence, but you cannot, we as a city do not have the right under the Municipal Act to enforce wages on third parties within the municipality. The other thing that I find interesting was your comment, well, we should look at housing. In Owen Sound in 1951, council and some citizens started social housing in this community, long before most other communities, in fact, all but one other community in Ontario. And we have built a lot of housing. Co-op is one way you can go. We have gone municipal nonprofit housing. And we've also had Lutheran Social Services, the Legion, and there's at least 1 or 2 churches involved in social housing other than the Lutheran Church. So yeah, we've come a long way, and we've done a lot. And I find it, I wish you'd analyzed what we've already done to realize we know that housing is a critical element. Thank you.
Oh, Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for your report, and there was some really interesting, I was at one of your presentations as well, some really interesting information. I know your proposal is to talk about a living wage for our employees and for our contracted employees, and I can't support that at this time. We are, and as far as getting a report back from staff, we just went through our budget meetings. We know that our budgets long-term are not looking great, and I'm not sure what that number would be, but I know it's probably more than I'll be able to support at this time. So I don't want to send staff off doing a report that I know I won't be able to support in the end. What I would point out, there are 4 points here. 2 of them, one of them talks about working with the Grey Bruce region about developing our economy. I think we'd all are in favor of that. This report does discuss some of these items, and I'm wondering if it wouldn't be appropriate to send those particular topics about the economy and how do you develop it in Grey Bruce. You mentioned agricultural and tourism. I think we're all in favor of trying to develop those things. So if that wouldn't be worth sending to our Economic Development Committee for further consideration. And the discussion around affordable housing. The affordable housing list in Owen Sound a number of years ago now was so long that it was hardly even worth calling it a list, because if people are on there for years and years and years, what's the value of it? Councillor Lemon is correct. The city has made some progress in that area, and there's another one that I think the city can continue to make progress on. The non-for-profit housing, as Councillor Lemon and myself are members of that board, are now just moving forward on trying to redevelop some of their properties now. I do think that's one area where this council has made strides, can continue to make strides. We don't have a lot of money to spend, but can we provide some leadership and partnership, as we've done in the past, with the provincial government or other agencies to try and get more social housing, to try and shorten that list, to try and, because I agree, the housing is probably the number one, well, sorry, my opinion is housing is probably the number one thing that we can do. So, you know, receive the report. I'm not sure what else we can do other than receive it, but certainly 2 out of the 4 items I'd like to have further discussion on. So I guess after the motion to receive, I would have subsequent motions, whether it passes or fails.
Okay, so I think we've discussed it. Can we call the?
Excuse me, point of information? Do you mind? Can I make a point of information?
If you,
Very quickly?
okay.
Toronto has a fair wage policy, sir, and it obliges its contractors to pay a fair wage for the work that they do for the city. And Toronto definitely has the authority, and it has it's under the same municipal act. So yes, you do have the authority to oblige third parties to pay their employees, if they're doing contract work for you, a fair wage or even better, a living wage.
Okay, I'm
That's
going to call the question, which was moved to table the report, or to receive the report. I'm sorry, receive the report. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. That means I have to decide, don't I? And I'm not in favor of receiving the report. So next motion, Councillor Thomas.
Yes, Your Worship, I would move that we ask staff to prepare a report for us on the potential impact of item 1 and of item 2. So I think, are we supposed to read county there or city?
Well,
I think that when you
was a
referred to
misprint,
it,
yes,
you meant that it would be the city of Owen Sound.
yeah,
not
it
the
should
county
be
of Purdon.
municipality in a general sense.
Okay, so I would ask that we have a report on item 1 and on item 2, the potential impact.
Okay, we've discussed that. Go ahead, Councillor Greg.
A quick mention to that would be for us to be mindful that the scope of expertise needed to look into this, which has been illustrated to us by the associations to the C.D. Howe Institute, Center Policy Initiatives. These are big dollar, very intellectual individuals behind the scenes here that have done many papers on it, and I really am wary of the amount of work and effort and dollars that you're going to thrust upon the shoulders of city staff to conduct such a report.
Councillor Thomas?
Through you, Your Worship, I think all we're looking for here is a comparative analysis. Our city staff being paid a living wage and our contractors being paid a living wage, and if not, what would the potential impact of a living wage be on us financially? Just to further refine the motion. I'm not looking for a complete analysis of the study.
Councillor Kepke?
Just to clarify, by receiving the report, I took it as being a courtesy and certainly not against a living wage. So I want that just clarified, that I'm not against a living wage.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate that.
Okay, Madam Clerk, you got that question? I'm not sure that I do. Councillor Thomas?
That city staff prepare a report for council looking at the potential impacts of a living wage vis-a-vis city staff and contract staff.
Good, okay. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's carried. Deputy Mayor Wright? Deputy Wright Mayor?
I put a motion on the floor that number 3 and 4 be referred to the Economic Development Committee.
Okay. Councillor McManaman?
Sorry, if I just might, number 4 maybe should just be referred to our nonprofit housing group, if I might suggest.
Well, to the respective committees.
To the respective committees, thank you.
We don't need to deal with them.
That's fine.
Okay. Councillor Kepke, had your hand up? No, we're okay. All in favor? Carried? Opposed? It doesn't matter, I guess. It was carried. Good. Thank you. It turned out to be more like my University of Alberta courses than...
Thank you, Your Worship and
Thanks.
Council. Thank you very much for hearing us out. I've got quite a handle on the research, and I've also made some very good contacts amongst some of the think tanks that I've mentioned, and so if you want to take advantage of our expertise, just give me a call.
Thank you. Thank Councillor Craig for his efforts of obviously doing some research and being ready to think about it. Thank you. Okay, I think we're down to 9C, which is Mr. Steve Meades from the CYOS, Aviation Management, for our, I think, annual airport update.
Your Worship, members of council, staff, I look forward to being here on my once-a-year visit. Brianna said you got 7 minutes, Steve, so I'll try my best that 7 minutes I'll have it wrapped up. Irregardless, maybe to explain to the new council members what we are, who we are, what we do is in early 2011, a group of pilots and hangar owners at Owen Sound Airport, Owen Sound Billy Bishop Regional Airport, made a proposal to the city to take over the operation of it at the conclusion of the contract of the previous employee of the city. And the proposal was accepted, and it's we are 15 to 16 from Owen Sound Billy Bishop Regional Airport that threw in a little bit of money each to create a wage system for the next month and a half to operate the airport at not-for-profit. So we created a corporation that was not-for-profit, thanks to one of the local lawyers whose son flies, and got it done at no cost. But irregardless, our job is to look after the day-to-day operation of the airport for the city. 2014 movements are like takeoffs and landings, for example. I'm just going to go over some items of probable importance here. We're up marginally to 6,162 during business hours, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. At nighttime, in the summer, you can probably add another 15% to that. That's not counting medevac or military. Our commercial flights in 2014 amounted to 229. 229 flights that were coming in for our reason to Owen Sound, either delivering people or chartered for deliver people or just-in-time freight. That equates to one commercial flight in every 1.6 days at the airport. So people, the public is not aware of that, I'm sure. The main users are Transcontinental Printing, they're number one, Van Wyck Packaging, the Monroe Plant, Tenneco, Hobart, Griffiths Island. We've attained some Griffiths Island business there this year that was elsewhere, I'll say, and as well as the Armed Forces Meaford. The aircraft range from Cessna Caravans, which are 8, 9, 12-seaters, pretty good power, single engine, to twin-engine King Airs, which are popular. The biggest are C-130 transports from the Armed Forces that are either bringing supplies to Meaford or parachute training. Air ambulance medevacs average 1 point every 9.2 days. Mostly this year we've noticed it's fixed wing more so than helicopter, but Orange still have fixed wing flights. Air Bravo and Northern Air are contractors that have been often arriving into Owen Sound either to most of the time to pick up to take people to London quickly. And a lot of it is, well, not a lot of it, but at least a third of them are after hours, which is usually 11 to 4 in the morning. And we're there, we're open within 10 minutes actually when we get the call. Interesting, training flights are now over half of our traffic at Owen Sound. Owen Sound Flight Services just acquired another aircraft, a second aircraft. This time, this one has heat in it and it's all weather. You can fly it in the junk and you know where you're going and you know how far away you are, 1.17 miles off the end of the runway, which is going to be really good with training and charter service. The the school has really had good success with their ground school enrollments and getting ready to start up another ground school. Kind of a feather in our hat here this year with help from the city manager's office. We were able to expedite Tilly's Cafe and Bakery to help with the application to NEC so they can set up their operations at the airport last October 1st. That took place in a 3-week period with help from the city. And airport restaurants traditionally don't do well. This one is doing very well. And if you're going there on a Sunday, be prepared. You might be standing outside a little bit waiting to get in because it's pretty strong. We've already had some flights in from Brampton and Oshawa, Collingwood, Gravenhurst, that now they've found us. And I got a phone call yesterday, although the weather was just marginal where they were leaving from. They want to know what time Tilly's was open. So they're doing some pretty good business there, which is good to see, because if they're successful, then totally we are all successful. So he's added staff there as well, and it's a success story that will increase our image and probably lure some more visiting aircraft, as what we saw last fall. My project kind of last year was we found this C-Card Airport snowblower up in Amos, Quebec. And after last winter, it was quite a job to get through 4 to 5 feet of drifts on the runway and still be able to deposit the snow away from the runway lights so that they'll still be able to be seen coming in at night. And it was a tough go. We had to sublet outside with a 5-foot blower, and the guy stayed longer than he wanted to, or we wanted him to, because we only had a certain amount of money to play with, and I had to go underneath the table at the city manager's office to get that righted a bit. But,
Is that where the gold bricks are?
well, irregardless, the city manager's office has been bloody excellent to deal with, and
I hope you tell everybody outside the city hall that. That's great.
yeah, well, I don't mind. I don't mind a bit. Anyway, this snowblower is got 560 horsepower. It's one where you climb up a ladder on the side and you walk along a metal ramp and you open the door to get in and start the engine that's underneath it that drives a 4-wheel drive thing. And it only had 1,711 hours on it, and government maintained, so we had to get it home. Harold Sutherland was instrumental in getting it to Owen Sound, and Wave Equipment pretty much rebuilt it this summer. We've got 30 hours on it already. That snow that we had between New Year's and January the 9th, with some breakdowns of the normal equipment, the blower stepped in and was working 8 hours a day, and it throws her like nothing we've ever had before to play with. So irregardless, another thing that city manager's office helped us with last June was allowing us to purchase a 10-foot wide Bueller 3-gang grass cutter from Parks Department. And its new home is at the airport, and it used up our remaining little bit of reserve funds that we had accumulated. Our annual events are the Copa for Kids, which everybody knows about. We're flying kids 8 to 17 years old for their first airplane ride, and we usually fly 125 to 140 kids each June. Jay Murdoch is a WestJet pilot, local boy. He does the ground school for the kids, and they all get a flight certificate at the end, and they all go home and they're pretty happy taking it to school, and helps us with our awareness, I'm thinking there. This year is our 7th annual Wings and Wheels. June 28th it'll be. It brings to the airport 300 plus classic cars. Last year we had 68 aircraft fly in from Ottawa to Elliott Lake, Sudbury area, as well as the locals. Flanked by the Canadian Wartime Museum, which had a World War II B-17 for static display, and they brought a DC-3 they screwed 11 seats in it for the public to go for rides, and they got one flight off, and they had 2 other flights waiting, but the crosswind got too strong. It was coming in at too great an angle for felt the safety fine line was going to be jeopardized if we kept doing it. So he's coming back. We're going to fly a whole bunch of people and in the same aircraft. So incidentally, it's always a 5,000 liter day for the city selling fuel that day. Last year was the highest attendance with the public. The Owen Sound Rotary Club and the Scenic City Order of Good Cheer are the sponsor of it, and we get some free advertising on the dock. What's coming next, the future? Well, with Tilly's, it's opening a whole new door. We've got an inquiry from the Flying Farmers to come back for their AGM, which would close Tilly's down for the day because they would fill it. And they usually show up with 20 aircraft, so we'll sell some more gas. The flight school with the second aircraft is going to be jumping the movement numbers, that's for sure. Fuel sales, which have been lagging because of the economy, it should get bumped back up. I've talked to Ruth about this a couple of times anyway. We're meeting with Transport Canada shortly to investigate Owen Sound with 2 GPS approaches, because GPS is the way of the future now. The old VOR systems from 1962 are being phased out because they're wore out, and they're not near as accurate as the GPS. And the cost has come down quite a bit on the GPS, so we're going to work on that and see how it goes. Ken's going to help me, he says. In closing, council needs to be aware that our group is aware of the cost crunch affecting the city and other municipalities, of course. We accepted the challenge in 2011 to operate the airport best possible at the least cost. We do have a vested interest to keep up the momentum from our budget, which is, incidentally, I have to tell you, this is only 58% of the cost compared to a local airport nearby. So, and we're getting the job done. And in good faith of our budget, which is that 58% of the local other local near airport, I'm going to return back $3,126 to the city because we're not for profit, and that's out of our budget that we didn't use. And along with that comes our financial statement, which I'll have with it, which shows Terry King has surmised that we owe back $3,126 to the city.
Oh, we should have had a great big check ready.
I do. Oh, yeah, that's right. You mean not like this one, eh? So anyway, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions? Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Mr. Meades, for that presentation. I would agree when you stepped forward there a number of years ago to move forward at the provide the service at the lowest cost. I think there has been a lot of success there, so you deserve credit. You deserve credit there. A couple of questions. You mentioned a number of businesses that use your airport quite a bit. Is that for corporate jets? Is that what you were talking about?
They're not jets. They're not. We don't get much jet traffic, but they're King Airs, like twin engines.
Okay.
They hold 11 to 14 people on board.
Okay, that's what you were talking about. That's usually their movements for those businesses?
For Transcontinental.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been in.
Okay. Second one, I asked you this, I think maybe last year too, the state of the runway. That's the big capital expense looming. What's it look like now?
Because it's all limestone on the bottom versus clay like in other airports, our runway isn't near as soft as what some of the others would be. So it's staying pretty good at this time. We've had to do a little bit of emergency stuff at the end of 3.6 where it started to open up a little bit and would need more than what our little machine was offering at the time, our crack sealer. But we fixed it, and it's watertight for the winter anyway.
Okay, and the last question, you mentioned Tilly's. So when is Tilly's open?
7 a.m. to 3 p.m.
All right, good.
Every
Thanks.
day.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you can find them on Facebook.
And Councillor Kepke?
Can you tell me, are all the hangars rented or leased, I should say? Or are there some empty?
The hangars are all full. Last year, a double hangar went up, and then this last December 1st, another one. It's not paved on the ramps yet, but and the hydro isn't hooked up to it yet because of the weather went down quick. But we have room in the new hangar to put the blower in and the city-owned John Deere tractor to get it out of the elements because the hydraulics freeze up.
So how many hangars are there then?
18 single hangars.
And are the leases with the city
Yes.
for those?
We have 46 aircraft based there now. 47 counting the new Owen Sound Flight Services.
All right, good. Any other questions? We'll keep moving before it gets to be midnight. You want to just hand that check over?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll just deliver it where I'm supposed to. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Meades and his whole group for the work they've done at the airport in the last year. So next on our list is number 10, public question period, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that any questions from the public? Number 11, correspondence received for which direction of council is required. 11A is a correspondence from Grey County Warden Kevin Eccles with regard to the annual Wardens Forum. And I think if we recall correctly, the wardens used to come to visit, and then they decided they wouldn't come to visit, and I think that's to each lower municipality. Instead, we go to the Wardens Forum.
Your worship, didn't we, last year, I thought we had the warden come. I thought we invited them to come.
We did invite, yes, Warden Brian Milne was here.
Well, I think it'd be important that we do invite the warden again and get a State of the Union from the warden if possible, especially with a lot of new members here too. So I'd move that we ask the warden to attend a future meeting at his convenience.
Well, one, we can all go to the Wardens Forum, so we'll all meet him there. However, we do have TV cameras here that I don't think he has in West Grace, so that might be an attraction for him. Deputy Mayor, right?
I think the Warden's Forum this year is going to be basically based on what the county does and how the city can interact with the county, the municipalities interact with the county, and, you know, that sort of thing, what services are available at the county that can help out the municipalities. Okay. So whether there's a need to bring the warden or not, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. It's certainly up. He will come if we want him to come.
Councillor McManaman, is that a motion?
Yes.
So it's a motion to invite Warden Kevin Eccles to come and visit us as well as the Wardens Forum. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Carried. 11B, correspondence from the Chair of the Owen Sound Communities Association with regard to public consultation on changing bus routes. Anybody? Councillor Dodd?
I'll just move the motion that we receive it and this report and send it to Operations Committee to open up for, I guess, notify the public, any future bus changes, route changes.
Councillor McManaman?
If I might, a question for Mr. Becking. On this specifically talks about route changes. Am I correct in saying that the route changes have been decided quite some time ago? Is that a fair statement?
Through you, Your Worship, yes. As council is likely aware, the city undertook a major review of the entire transit service in 2014. I understand, while I wasn't here at the time, I understand that the consultant's recommendations were brought forward in June and July of last year and were approved by council for implementation. I would point out that we are already well on our way to doing so, carrying out council's direction.
And just further to that, on some of these stop changes, would you happen to know how many stops we have? That's maybe an unfair question.
The proposed system, I believe, has 133 or 134 stops in it, some of which will not change as a result of the proposed recommendations. I would say that there will be relatively minor changes to between a third and a half of those to one degree or another, either shifting them further down the road to a more advantageous location, and of course then all of the others shift, because there's generally speaking about a 200 to 250 meter spacing along each of the routes. In some instances, some stops will move from one side of the street to the other because the direction of the route has been changed as a result of the new routing.
And so just to wrap that up, so with that information, there will be some sort of public notification when that's all taking place?
Yes, Your Worship, that's correct. There will be a communication strategy that will be put in place to advise the public. We will be producing new route maps and so forth that will be put in place prior to the shift over to the new routes. We still anticipate having a changeover sometime in the late spring.
So if I might, this group is just actually, when you read through it, it's saying, we'd be happy to help you communicate, as I really think what it's saying. So perhaps, if I might, to the mover of the motion, that we receive it and we ask that this group be included in the circulation when we have, when we're doing the changes, the maps, the stops, and they can then communicate that on to their people as well. Sort of a win-win.
So I'll go back to Councillor Dodd on that. Is that okay? You accept that variation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Okay. Oh, sorry. City Manager, Ms. Corsi.
Your Worship, I would just note that, as with every group in the municipality, we do all of our notices on our website and Twitter and Facebook, and that's where we drive everyone to, so everyone gets all of our information. It's problematic if we start to say we're going to communicate directly to one group versus another group. So what we do instead is try and do our very best communication out on our social media sites and our website, so that they can then very quickly and easily determine when things are coming up.
Okay. Councillor Kepke.
Just a question, has this group, I know it's a fairly new group in the city since the election actually, have they asked for information from yourself on this, on the routes, and if so, have they communicated back to you?
No, they have not.
Would this matter be going to Operations Advisory Committee sometime again?
No, Your Worship. From staff's perspective, council's direction has been given, and we are in the process of carrying it out in accordance with our commitments to the council.
So if in fact, when we do post our own communication, this organization can pick that up and communicate with their group?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Okay, Councillor, I think Lemon was next, and then Deputy Mayor Wright.
Well, begging to differ, you still have to go to the Accessibility Committee on the bus stops. That has not happened yet.
With respect, Your Worship, we've already been to committee and council. We were to committee. There was a presentation by the consultant on the 24th of July. We've been to Accessibility Committee on the 23rd of June. There was a report presented by the council, or by the consultant, on the 18th of June. So.
Yeah, but the routes changed at that time, or after that, and some of the stops have been relocated since then.
Your Worship, that's not my understanding. The consultant's report gave council a number of options, and the council resolution that was adopted by council committee recommended that option 2A be adopted, and council ratified that decision.
Okay.
That was the, on 14th Street, that was the option to keep the bus on the side of the senior citizen housing there, is that correct? That was where it was reversing the direction?
No. 2A had the reverse direction and the doubling up on 14th between 2nd Avenue West and 4th Avenue West.
So in other words, the seniors, the 300 seniors who live in the apartment buildings will have to cross 14th Street to the north side.
We're getting away from the motion.
Yeah, I am.
Long way
I
away
think
from the
it's
motion.
voting.
I believe, Your Worship, the councillor is correct. The bus is proposed, or will proceed on a westbound direction along 14th Street, where it then will turn up into the Brook area. It will come back down. It will again move in a westerly direction, and then turn onto Alpha Street, where it will proceed to 10th Avenue West, and then head eastbound.
Okay, I think you'll be hearing.
Councillor Deputy Mayor Wright?
I'm just saying, we did approve all of these last summer.
That is correct, Your Worship.
Okay, so the public know that we have already approved all of these routes, except some tweaking, and that tweaking is going on the internet, right, as it's being done.
As we speak, we are implementing the plan that was approved by council based on option 2A that was presented by the consultant.
Right.
The commitment we have made to committee and council is that we will implement it as it was proposed by the consultant. If we arrive at any difficulties after implementation, we will evaluate those and we will recommend tweaking, for lack of a better phrase or term, at that point. But at this point, staff have proceeded on the basis of the approved recommendation.
From last June and July.
Last June and July, yes, that's correct, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas.
Yes, Your Worship, I just want to come back to the motion which regards this letter from the Owen Sound Community Association. And I think one of the key areas that was a criticism in past years was an issue about communications. And while I appreciate that staff has modes and methods for communicating, I personally don't think we can go wrong by expanding our communications in any way possible. Here we've got a group that's offering to receive our communications and further them out there into the world to its membership, et cetera, which I expect will grow. And I don't think it takes a lot of work to add an email address to a list that's going out in any case.
Okay. Councillor, Ms. Corsi?
I just caution that maybe not with this group, maybe not with the next group, but there will be a legal requirement that we won't meet if we obligate ourselves through every department to personally tell people about every action of the city. So that's the concern. That's why you see almost every municipality in Ontario driving people to where we put the notices versus trying to make sure we keep inclusive lists throughout our entire organization. Because if we miss somebody, particularly where there's a legal issue, it becomes very problematic for the municipalities.
Councillor, who was down there? Councillor Gregg?
Thank you, Mayor By. Yeah, I was getting back to the fundamental message of the request, and it's not reasonable for us to have staff consult or communicate with one officer, two officer, or a specific group. It just can't be done. It's not reasonable. And I want to make sure that every resident of the city knows that they do have the ability to pick up the phone or email their counselors too. Our job is here to represent them and bring their concerns forward and go back to them, but it's not reasonable for us to expect staff to pick and choose who they should be notifying on individual matters.
Councillor O'Leary, I think you had your hand up.
I just worry about getting to the point where, like, at some point we have to draw the line. Like, we're gonna have people asking about our operations, our snow removal, our priorities. Eventually, you're gonna have to just make a decision at some point without the interference.
Okay, okay, next.
I just would like clarity on the motion,
Thank you.
please.
That was my next question.
What I have is that City Council receives the correspondence and includes Owen Sound Community Association in future public notifications.
Okay, so the motion is to include them. Councillor McManaman?
Sorry, I specifically meant on this, when the new transit routes and transit stops are implemented. I didn't mean on every communication, and I certainly didn't mean on every communication. I meant on the specific question they've asked here. Sorry.
Councillor Kepke?
And that was my question as well, whether it was just on this particular item, that they be given the notice once it's been posted.
Okay, I'm going to call the question so we can keep moving.
So is that the motion, Councillor Dodd?
Sure, I just,
Just say yes.
yes.
Say yes firmly
So it is included that they will be sent information or not?
on this one,
On
on
this
this item,
particular
yes.
Okay, it will be on this according to the motion.
Yeah, okay, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, already a whole bunch. Everybody, carried. Great, thank you. I think we're down to 12, which is reports of committees and city staff. 12A sub 1 is report from city manager with regard to strategic plan development update.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. Wonder actually if we could go to the first one you had up, which was, this will be hopefully tomorrow morning, the unveiling of our new website regarding our strategic plan. So the graphics on there speak to the inclusiveness of our community and all the circles around it. I would also point out that that speaks to what we're going to be doing, driving through our website to communicate with our public. So if you look at the screen, you can see that we're going to, actually I can't read it from here, I'd forgotten about that part. So bear with me while I, oh, thank you. Okay, so we're going to put all the documents on that website. So if we can just scroll up, we've also got this previous strategic plans. We put the request for the proposal up there so the public know what we requested. We've then done the subsequent reports, including this report that's coming out today, the project work plan, if you continue to scroll up. Also tells the public exactly where the council meetings are, and hopefully after tonight we'll be able to shortly put public meeting or public meetings up. If we could then scroll up again. So it speaks to how to get involved through the community meetings that's to be scheduled and to be spoken to tonight, through what you have described in the report, the places and spaces conversation. So both staff and council can go out to places like the farmers market, the library, the art gallery, maybe the rec center, the Y, and really talk to people about what you want to see in your community. What's your strategic plan going to look like? We're going to do an online survey, which again will allow for people to comment and to participate. We'll be on Facebook and of course on Twitter, and we will have a strategic plan review feedback form that I will be reviewing and our consultants will be reviewing, and we will report that back to council. So I just wanted you to see what the website's going to look like, that we're going to try and that we're ready to roll out tomorrow, depending on how this evening's discussion goes. So the first part of this report really speaks to things that I think council's already aware of, and were covered in previous reports. So if I could go to page 3 of 8 of the report. We've scheduled 4 council sessions, and we have dates for those that we'd like to get set fairly shortly. I'm sure as all of you are aware now, the challenges of trying to get scheduling for 9 members of council and all the support staff is a challenge, so we'd like to get those locked in as early as possible. And ultimately, council, this is your plan, so we need to get you involved as early as possible. We also have structured the process in such a way as to provide multiple avenues for engagement and collaboration. And that includes opportunities for input from senior management, Grey County, stakeholder organizations, and the community. As with most strategic plans, we're going to be doing an environmental scan, the gap analysis, and the SWOT analysis as well. And you can see the fairly exhaustive list of data sources that have already gone to our consultants and that they're currently working on. The area that I specifically want to draw your attention to is the engagement and communications activities, because that's really a key undertaking in developing the new strategic plan for the city. The plan will ultimately be informed by the perspectives of not only City Council and senior staff, but the stakeholders and probably most importantly, the community, all of whom will be asked to contribute meaningfully to the development of our mission and vision statements. You've met the main consultants, Laura Consulting, and they have proposed a core approach to engaging stakeholders in the community that's both effective and cost efficient. The full extent of that consultation into strategic planning is now to be determined by you, and that's the intent of this report, is to give you an opportunity for that discussion. So what we have done is identify the core engagement program, the first of which is a community meeting. And the target audience for that would be for all residents of Owen Sound. If you would like more community meetings, specifically to identify initiatives, etc., that would cost approximately $3,500 per meeting. The digital engagement, you've seen how that rolls out to a fair degree based on our website. The places and spaces conversations, I briefly mentioned that earlier. So that would be where both senior management and I would hope members of council would go out to the community at large and provide information on the project and encourage individuals to complete comment cards or surveys. And I've mentioned some of the potential spots where that could happen. We would again emphasize that we'd like to see council take a leadership role in regard to that. And again, if you'd rather have our consultants lead each of those, that type of engagement would be approximately $3,000 per event that you did that. The communication activities, I've shown you the project website, at least in draft form. Social media engagement, we proudly note that we have over 2,000 followers on Twitter and over 1,300 likes on Facebook. So social media is an additional tool for the city that we want to use. And that approach will be led by city staff, primarily out of my office through Sharon. Local media, you guys have to get to work too. So we'll prepare media releases and we expect you to get them out there and push that information. So you guys have got a task, so listen up. So we want to put it in the Sun-Times, we want to put it through Bayshore Broadcasting, the Dock, Grey County and the Owen Sound websites, as well as Grey County This Week. So we want to engage a significant portion of the city's community in this exercise. So there is a preliminary total budget of $50,000. I've shown you what that gets you. I'm now asking if that's sufficient or if you want to put more time and resources into this.
Councillor O'Leary?
Through you, Your Worship, just a question for the city manager. This, it's my first time around, and I appreciate the input from the staff and the council and the general public. We just did this 5 years ago, correct? Is there really that much change? Is there that many revisions that we have to spend $50,000? Or at the end of the day, are we just making small changes, or how much change is there between, like in 5 years?
I personally think this is an investment well worth this council listening to their community and having that discussion amongst yourselves to determine if that was the right direction or if there are shifts that you want to see. And it is not only identifying specific vision and objectives, but it is much about this council as a unit saying, what do you want for this council in the next 5 to 10 years? So I think that's a relatively small investment to get your direction set now. I'm sure that totally answered the question. It could come out very similar, but it might not, and I think $50,000 to check the pulse of your community and you as a group determine what direction you want to head in is well worth that investment.
Can I just clarify when our last one was? I know we did sort of a mini thing a couple of years ago, but
We did a mini one 4 years ago now, actually, I think, or pretty close to 4 years ago. And then there was a previous one, I'm just looking to see if I have the dates here. Do you remember probably, I'm thinking it was probably about 8 years ago that one was done.
so I think it has been longer than, since the full one was done. I have Councillor Lemon next.
Well, I understand the concern about the money, but I was chair of the original strategic planning committee in the city quite a few years ago. And we did an all-out attempt to get public input with a number of community meetings. And we got a lot of changes in direction as to the way the city was going. A lot of people wanted to input and did. And to me, the best thing you can do is public meetings where that's what the focus is. It's not you're going shopping and you run into somebody, it's direct. And we had them up at Georgian College. And we had, I think, about 300 people out to the meetings. One of the things I feel is the council has to reflect the community. And this is a new council, and we were sent a message that people wanted change. And so this is the way we're going to find the change. The important thing is that this is a community-driven process. It's what the community wants, not necessarily what the staff wants or what we want, but what our community speaks to for its future. And I think it's a good investment. I am not happy that there's only one public meeting in the whole thing. And I do not think that's adequate. There should be one at the beginning and one close to the end to go over what has been steamed out of the other inputs and to make sure that reflects, I believe, at least one more, because I know what people want to talk about. It's their community. That's what they want to talk about, and all aspects of it.
Thank you. Councillor Kepke.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's not unusual for new organizations or groups that get together to conduct a plan. The Police Services Board is required every 3 years to do a business plan. However, they do it in-house, so the dollars spent are certainly different. On the feedback form, I wonder if I could have a look at that again, and just questioning if individuals are required to put their address on it, and it looks like not, because we are a community larger than just Owen Sound, and the feedback from individuals from outside of Owen Sound who use our services and use what we provide in Owen Sound is just as important as the people who live in Owen Sound. So I'm hoping that those invitations are there, and perhaps somehow the feedback form could be adapted so that we can find out if they are a resident or a non-resident.
Looking to my IT firm, I don't think that's an issue. You may start to discourage people. I would leave it as optional, whether they fill it out or not.
Right, but it would be nice to know if they did have that. Thanks.
Councillor Thomas.
Yes, Your Worship, I'd just like to support what Councillor Lemon said. That was actually going to be my question. There is one public meeting, but I think in any act of creation for a client, there's always a revision meeting included. And I think, I feel very strongly that once we have a draft report, there needs to be another public meeting to share what we've come up with, to be sure that it truly reflects the vision of the entire community. I think certainly in the past year, I've gotten the sense that our community has never been more interested and involved in the business of this city and the direction that the city's going than it is now. And I think that we need to keep that public engagement going. And certainly any opportunity that we can provide is going to be well placed.
Councillor McManaman.
Thank you. Just on Councillor Kepke's point, I think it's important to put their address on there. Because I think we want to get we want feedback from everyone. I think it's important to make sure we're getting feedback from the people that are paying the bill. So I personally think we should be having their address on there. Not optional, I think it should be, anyway, I'll leave it at that. Just my question, so this one, the community, what's it called? Community meeting. So when is it currently planned? At the end? Is that the time frame that you're thinking?
If you look, I was just checking myself.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to, right there.
On page 6 of 8.
Is that the one on the screen right now? It was on the screen.
So if you looked at community meeting,
Yep.
so right now, the community meeting would integrate presentations and opportunities. So I think it would fit probably somewhere around between council session 1 and 3. And then, as you see, they've given you the option there of additional meeting held to specifically identify initiatives and review the draft plan. So you would get their initial input, create the plan in draft, then come back and ask them, how do we do?
Sorry, and is that included, what you're saying right now? That's
No,
not?
the second one's not.
Okay. And the staff, or the places and spaces conversations, when would you see that taking? That would be more just asking people at key places and asking them to fill out the form, or to get back to us?
So I think what I'm going to ask our consultants to do is speak to council at the first session about that. So really give us all good direction on that and get us rolling out with that.
But that's what you're thinking, that's what you're thinking now. So you might be up at, you might be at the Bay Shore handing out
Yeah.
forms, get back to us.
Or
we're looking
you know
for
what, we'll
feedback.
probably do some sort of banner
Right, okay,
and, give you a table and a chair
right,
and,
okay.
you can shake hands and say, you know what, we're doing this, here's a form, but can you stand here and talk to me about what you see for the city and give you a few suggested questions, but the consultants are the best ones to advise you on that.
Then I would have to, I mean, I don't want to spend more money, but I don't know how you can, you'd have to have a meeting at the beginning and you have to go back to them at the end. I don't know how else we would do that, so. Now, does that need to be a consultant-led? Yeah, I suppose, I don't know. Anyway, I think you definitely need community meetings, so.
Councillor Lemon?
Yes, inside on the previous page that was up, it said Owen Sound residents. Excuse me, Owen Sound residents and ratepayers should always be the inclusive phrase, because there are many people who live outside the city of Owen Sound, yet pay municipal taxes for their business. I can give you a long list of them. And so we have to, when we're asking for addresses, we've got to be very, very careful, because those people may be actually taxpayers as well, although the residence is outside the city of Owen Sound. And there are a huge number of ratepayers inside the city of Owen Sound who are entitled to all the rights of residents and the right to vote in our elections, but they do not show an Owen Sound address.
Okay, I don't think anyone's moved it, have they?
I'll move the motion, Your Worship, to accept the report and proceed as proposed with the addition of the one other public meeting.
Okay, no discussion, all in favor? Good, carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
12A2 in the agenda, and I think it's at page 67, report from the deputy clerk, public appointees to boards and committees.
Yes.
Present that?
Yes, through you, Your Worship. In 2014, the upcoming vacancies for boards and committees were determined. The public vacancies were advertised through social media, a media release, and posting an ad in the Sun-Times. At the in-camera meeting on January 12th, Council reviewed applications from the public and directed staff to bring forward an open report to appoint certain public members to boards and committees for specified terms as noted in Schedule A to the report. The recommendation in this report is to have Council add one additional public appointment to the Financial Advisory Committee and include this in the 2015 Board and Committee bylaw, waive the sunset clause for various appointments, and direct staff to bring forward a bylaw to appoint public members to boards and committees.
Okay, questions? Anybody? Sorry, Councillor Kepke had her hand up first. I'll give you a second.
I think it might have been answered, but that did include waiving the sunset clause for those people that were appointed? Okay, thanks.
That is correct.
Councillor Lemon?
I thought Janice Curry's first term on the library board started in the last term of council.
2 4-year terms.
So we're not,
Going beyond the 6.
yeah, which we by necessity have to.
Yes. Good. Somebody want to move that report? Oh, I think, sorry, I was looking the other way, Councillor Lemon, so I'm going to go with Councillor O'Leary, and we'll get him onto the report there. All in favor? Good, carried, thank you. 12A3 is from Legislative Services Coordinator with regard to volunteer appreciation event. Going to present that, please?
Yes, through you, Your Worship. The City of Owen Sound's Mayor and City Council offer an appreciation event for the many volunteers that serve on city boards and committees or perform other important volunteer services for city departments. Each year, the Staff Volunteer Appreciation Committee meets and recommends a volunteer appreciation event to Council. This year, the committee is presenting 3 options for Council's consideration. The first option is to provide each volunteer with a $15 gift certificate at one of the local Owen Sound coffee shops. The second option is to provide each volunteer with a $20 voucher towards the purchase of a 2015 ticket at the Roxy or Georgia Bay Symphony for a performance of their choice. And the third option is to host a meet and greet at City Hall prior to a council meeting and provide volunteers with a City of Owen Sound souvenir.
Councillor Kepke?
Just a question. Can you give us an idea of who's included in, who gets invited to these things?
Volunteers.
Yes, through your worship to Councillor Kepke. All of the city committees, the members of the committees are included. And as outlined in the report, the Tom Thompson Art Gallery has their own event, so they don't participate. And the only one that isn't included is the Owen Sound Nonprofit Housing and the DIA Board.
Okay.
And this has been outlined in, this is in our policy that was attached to the report.
Okay, Councillor Lemon.
Well, considering Owen Sound, the city owns Owen Sound Municipal Nonprofit Housing, I didn't realize they weren't on the volunteer, and I would respectfully suggest they should be there. They put a lot of hard work and service into this community and benefits the community because that housing in the end is owned by the city of Owen Sound.
Do they have their own volunteer day?
They have a bit of a one, but it would be nice to see them recognized for the,
So they get to go to 2?
well, they have some suites and that's it.
Okay, discussion. This is a discussion that often goes for quite a while. Councillor Thomas.
I'll try to be brief. I relate to this completely because I've always been one of the 50% who don't turn up to these things. I read the recommendations. I like the idea of a voucher, but if I were given my druthers, I'd make the motion that we present a voucher for $15 in downtown dollars to the participants. Not everyone does coffee shops. I certainly do. But I think that it's a nice way for the city not only to recognize its volunteers, but to put something back into its downtown.
Discussion. Councillor Gregg?
I have a problem with just picking and choosing one part of the city to place those dollars. I think we're north to south, east to west. I like the idea of the voucher, and I do like the idea of to the symphony or the Roxy, something in the arts and culture line would be fine to me.
Okay, good. Councillor McManaman?
Your Worship, most of these people volunteer for the good of the city, and while it's important to say thank you, most of them aren't doing it, none of them are doing it for a gift certificate, and so I personally think the third one is, as well as being the least expensive option, is also the one that we can thank the people without costing a great deal of money. None of them, I don't believe any of them want us to spend a great amount of money to thank them. They're all doing it for the good of their community, so I'm more inclined for number 3, but I'll leave that.
Councillor O'Leary? Oh, okay. I was looking the other way, but whoever, you're both going at some point.
Thank you very much. I like the idea of number 3 too, and I would like to invite them all to come to City Hall, and I would give them a coffee mug, one of City's mugs. They're very nice. They've got pictures of the city on, and if we could get enough coffee mugs ordered and have I think a reception here where we could all meet them all and thank them all personally is the nicest thing we can do, and to present them with a coffee mug. That would be what I would like to do, and I'll put a motion on the floor that we do that.
Didn't you? There's a motion there.
Oh, did you have a motion on the floor?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'll let it go.
Okay, if you want to hold on just for a second, we'll see what happens. So, Councillor Thomas's motion is to give a $15 voucher in downtown dollars. All in favor? 2. That was defeated. 3, sorry. Still defeated, either way. Deputy Mayor Wright.
I'll put a motion on the floor that we host a meet and greet at City Hall prior to a council meeting and provide, and in good time prior to the council meeting, so that it's not a 10-minute prior, that perhaps we can hold, or not have an in-camera that night, or hold our in-camera short, but be up here at least by 6:30 so that we have a decent meet and greet, or hold our council meeting at 7:30, and present them all with a mug and say thanks to them.
Councillor Kepke?
The recommendation does say that those who don't attend could pick up their souvenir, but I think it would be a little easier if they were sent to the committees and the souvenir was given to them at the committee for those that don't attend, just to make sure they all get it, if you'll take that as a friendly amendment.
Okay. Yep, hi.
Just to be clear, in the report, it says they can provide a hat, scarf, cup, or pin, but you want to make sure that it's just the cup? Or mug? Okay.
Okay, further discussion, all in favor? That was carried. Yeah, we don't want the mugs thrown off the, 12A4, I think, is the next matter, which is Director of Financial Services, Statement of Council Remuneration and Expenses for 2014. Mr. Ritchie?
Thank you, Your Worship. As required by Section 284 of the Municipal Act, this is the annual statement of remuneration for council. It was prepared by admin assistant. I'd certainly be prepared to answer any questions, should there be any.
Councillor Kepke?
I'll move the receipt of that report.
Nobody wants to embarrass anybody? All in favor of receipt of that report? Carried, thank you. 12A5, report of events facilitator.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is really an update with respect to the Pan Am Games. Last June, Council had agreed to be a celebration community for the Pan Am Pan Am Games torch relay. So we're a celebration community. The torch will arrive in Owen Sound on June 11th from our east side and then leave on June 12th. We do have some responsibilities as a host community, and that's to sort of celebrate the arrival and of the torch in Owen Sound, ensure safe passage, and I can tell you that their security group is meeting with our police services and staff here to ensure the safe passage of the convoy and about 21 torch bearers that will participate in the event inside the city, and then also fund a celebration at the Bayshore Community Center. Funding, we have good news on a grant application, so we will be receiving a grant that will go towards the celebration. There's a community planning team. City staff are working hard on this, and we're asking council to provide them with a community spokesperson, and we are recommending the event facilitator fill that role. In as much as possible, we also defer to the mayor for comments. The community torchbearer, that's a matter dealing with identifiable individuals, and we'll be asking you for a motion in open acknowledging the individuals identified in the in-camera session.
Okay, questions, comments? Could somebody want to move receipt then? Councillor O'Leary moved receipt of that report. I guess, and the recommendation therein, correct? Approved, okay. Further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Down to 12A6, which is report from Facilities Booking Coordinator with regard to a execution of agreement with the Concert Factory, Inc. for our concert at Kelso Beach on July 25th.
Thank you, Worship. This is a proposal by the Concert Factory to have a country music festival or day at Kelso Beach Park on July the 25th. There is a report and an agreement. The standard conditions of the city would apply, including a damage deposit, a requirement for them to have insurance, compliance with the city's municipal alcohol policy, those types of things, public access to the trail and the splash pad during the event. As well, we're asking that council provide a 1-hour exemption to the noise bylaw till 12 p.m. or 12 a.m. On July 25th. So the recommendation is that you approve their request to use Kelso Beach Park on July 25th, subject to the conditions outlined in Schedule A, that we authorize a bylaw to execute the agreement, and that council grant an exemption to the noise bylaw.
Okay, questions, comments? Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Worship. Just a question for Ms. Coulter. And I know that's not part of this report, but designating them as a municipal significant event. Have we done that before in the past for for-profit individuals?
Through you, Your Worship, we have done that. In this case, we're proposing that we would bring a report back with respect to the municipal significance. They're looking at different options to providing their alcohol service. It may involve a nonprofit group. At that point, they wouldn't need to be designated as municipally significant, but we have done it for for-profit groups.
Just interesting that, as I'm thinking that through, whether we should be doing it for for-profit groups is a bigger question, I guess, but anyway.
Through you, Your Worship, we do have policy in our municipal alcohol policy about the criteria in order for council to designate it. Ultimately, it's the decision of the AGCO.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dodd?
I'd like to move the motion that we accept and receive this report.
And,
approve, sorry.
Approve the recommendations?
There we go.
Good. Any other comments? All in favor? Good, thank you. Down to 12B, which is consent items. Madam Clerk, do you want to give us an overview?
Yes, through you, Your Worship, there's a number of items on tonight's consent agenda. It includes 3 reports from the Facilities Booking Coordinator, one respecting an agreement with Charles Bowie for the operation of the boat launches, one respecting the Owen Sound Police Service's 16th Annual Polar Bear Plunge, and one respecting the 2015 Provincial Broomball Championship. The Legislative Services Coordinator has 2 reports respecting municipal information for the AGCO for 2 new businesses, being the Milkmaid and Casero Kitchen Table. There are 3 planning notices for which the city has no comment, minutes for receipt from the Tom Thompson Art Gallery Board, the Owen Sound Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation, the Owen Sound Housing Company, and the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority, as well as the correspondence that has been received that is being presented for the information of council.
Thank you. Questions? Deputy Mayor Wright?
Just a question on the first one, the boat launch rental. There's a charge for extended overnight parking. That's only for parking of a boat or something. That's not for overnight parking of a motor home or staying or camping.
Yes, Ms. Coulter?
Through Your Worship, there are provisions to allow certain overnight parking. It's called extended parking, so that would be the fee for that extended parking.
It's not camping like it's...
That's correct. It's not camping, it's extended parking.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll move then.
Okay, moved by Deputy Mayor Wright. Any other comments? Councillor Wright? Lemon, the far end.
You're really having a name problem. You got me confused with McManaman and now Councillor Wright. Anyway, my question is, the Milkmaid, is that going into where the H2O?
No, Gorbits.
In the Gorbits? Okay.
For you old timers that know what Gorbitz is.
Well, I can actually tell you that was originally National Grocers and McLaughlin Biscuits.
That was before my time. Any other observations? The broomball tournament, that's like a national or a provincial on March 20th, 21st, 22nd. Okay, other,
You're volunteering for the Polar Bear Fund?
I'm not. Councillor McManaman?
Thank you. Just looking at the art gallery minutes, it looks like they're moving further along with this idea of transitioning to a arm's length. And then there's also a lot of discussion about their own, a new facility. So I'm just wondering if it isn't time for them, to ask them to come for an update on just where they came to previous council. I can't remember when, but perhaps it's time for them to come back with an update on where they're at.
Sorry, who?
The art gallery.
Art gallery? I believe there's a public meeting that they plan to have in January or February before they come back. It's going to be on into February, I think, before they're ready. They have a plan of when they're coming to us.
So that'll come back after they'll come back to us after their public meeting?
That's my recollection, yes.
Well, that's good. I just thought, it looks like it's moving along here, and I thought we should get an update.
Councillor
That's good, as
Gregg?
long as one's planned.
Thank you, Your Worship. That may be a membership meeting at the end of January, this coming week.
Yep.
But yeah, they do have considerable more answers to some of the questions raised from a public meeting in October, so you'll be seeing those soon.
You the polar bear? You the polar bear? Yeah.
One of the new police services members should be.
Oh. So apparently Councillor O'Leary's just volunteered to be in the polar bear dip as one of the new members on the police board.
There will be 2 blue moons in the sky
There
the
will
day
be.
I jump into
There
the
would be.
bay in the summer, never mind the middle of the winter.
You're absolutely right.
Is there any part of that you don't understand?
Your worship,
Councillor
do you
Wright's
have-
motion is to receive the consent agenda items. All in favor? Great, thank you. That gets us all the way to 12C, which is minutes of boards, committees for approval, and it's from the Community Planning and Heritage Advisory. Councillor McManaman, are you chairing that one? Do you want to give us a brief
I was for
overview?
that particular meeting, sure. Not a whole lot there, 2 different items. One was a facade improvement application and grant for the former Collins Fine Furniture, 922nd Avenue East. Now, what was in there before? I was trying to think of that. It was furniture, it was,
No, it was a general, what was it called?
Peter, come on.
He'll remember. Was it McDonald's?
McDonald's Furniture.
No, it wasn't
No, it wasn't
furniture. McDonald's, yeah, yeah.
Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this trip down memory lane. It's been bought by Sydenham Properties, and they are converting it into the back part for some of their work that's going on the new building, and the front part is sort of a showroom for selling new suites. So they've got some really, the pictures of what they plan to do with the front of that facade of the building look really great, and it'll be a big improvement for our downtown. The other issue discussed here was the one council, remember, was sent back about electronic signs, message display signs that were, this was raised several weeks ago. EMDs, they're called, that were inside the premises of stores projecting out. A lot of people talk about the one at the Coach Inn as the prime example at the intersection of 2nd and 10th. The bylaw, which has been in place after a lot of public consultation, and the official plan talked about regulating EMDs. That was one that sort of slipped through the cracks, or it wasn't thought of at the time. A couple of businesses had put signs just inside their window projecting out. There are restrictions on where you can do that and how you can do it in the downtown. The committee, council asked the committee to take another look at it. They did clarify some of the wording, tighten up some of the wording. Basically that signs, any signs posted on the interior surface of any window not be allowed in basically the downtown core that are intended primarily for external advertising. So that took it away from if there's a I can't even think of an example, a sign that's in the business, but it's not intended to be projecting out onto the street, that is allowed. Ones that are still restricted. The bylaw that's been in place for over a year now has restrictions in the downtown core on what electronic messages are allowed in the downtown core. Obviously, signs that are already in place would have to be grandfathered. This would be for new signs coming forward. The committee looked at it, tightened up some of the wording, but their intent was still the same, that they felt there should be, that restriction should be in place in the downtown core. That, right, that was pretty well the entire, those two items were the gist of the meeting, so happy to answer any questions.
Councillor holy golly, Councillor Lemon on my right.
I would ask that the information on electronic signs be pulled. I feel that that should be voted on separately. I do not agree with us trying to regulate people, business people into the ground. And so I would ask to be pulled separately.
Okay. Madam Clerk, if you can help me with this one. So he's going to pull the part of the report with, okay. So I'm asking for a motion to move that report, save and accept that part. Moved by Councillor Kepke. So all in favor of receipt of the report without that? That's carried. Now with regard to that, Councillor McManaman?
I'm sorry, and Councillor Gregg and I were just talking, just to clarification, we're talking about the electronic signs, messaging signs, the kind you see, I hate to use there's one up on 16th Avenue, Gowings one has one there, the one at the Coach Inn. They're the ones, the electronic signs that are sort of flashing, displaying, not your standard, open sign or, anyway, and I just point out that the restriction on allowing those in the downtown core has been in place for, we're into our second year now on that. So that's not the issue that was sent back to the committee. The issue was about signs inside windows that were intending to.
So I think you need a motion to start things off. So
I would move that we approve the minutes.
Okay, now
Or approve that portion of the minutes, sorry.
Councillor Lemon?
Well, I feel that the signs inside the store's window is entirely the business of what's in the store. And I don't think we should be regulating this. I think we've got too many regulations.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And I will vote against this. I think this is yet another intrusion of the city into people's ability to run a business. And I think we should get out of that business.
Thank you. Other discussion? Councillor McManaman?
Sorry, I was, I left out the part that we did talk to other municipalities, what they do about this type of sign. Meaford, Blue Mountains, Collingwood, Saugeen Shores, Stayner, Orangeville, Stratford, Belleville, and the City of Toronto either prohibit them or severely restrict what we're talking about here.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Further discussion? In favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's carried. Thank you. 12D1, minutes of the in-camera city council meeting held on January 12th, 2015. Councillor
Your Worship,
Kepke.
I'll move approval of the minutes of the January 12 in-camera meeting.
Discussion, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Other business, Councillor McManaman and Councillor Thomas. Councillor McManaman, you can go first.
Certainly. Thank you, Your Worship. You'll recall at the last meeting, we directed staff to contact our neighboring municipalities to discuss streamlining our recreation, the way we collect our user fee for recreation programs. And I'm just wondering if we could get an update from staff on that.
Certainly. Thank you, Your Worship. After the meeting of council on January the 12th, a memo was prepared and forwarded to Meaford and Georgian Bluffs. The idea, as you will recall, was around streamlining the administration of the collection of the non-resident fee. So starting with minor sport registration that's coming up on February 12th, so very soon, Meaford residents will no longer have to wait for a refund for their non-resident user fee when registering children in minor sports in Owen Sound. So if you're from Meaford, you'll pay 10% of the non-resident fee. So for field and floor sports for the summer. You'll pay $10 per child per sport. Out of pocket, the municipality of Meaford will then be invoiced by the city and pay the $90 directly to the city. So it's an approach to administration of the non-resident fee that City and Meaford believe will be a benefit to minor sports as well as Meaford residents.
Good. Thank you.
Sweet.
Councillor McManaman?
Sorry, and that's great that Meaford has agreed to that. You didn't mention Georgian Bluffs and their reply.
Georgian Bluffs at this time has decided to remain with how the fee is administered historically for their residents.
Did they give a reason for that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Good. That's that. Councillor Thomas is next.
Yes, so Your Worship, last summer, the former City Council agreed to keep our transit terminal open for another year while they explored other possibilities for that building. I just wonder if we could have the city's Economic Development Director report to us on a strategy for finding alternate uses for that building in the time remaining. I'd like to make a motion.
And do you want to say specifically staff, just in case?
Staff, yes, thank you.
We're not limiting too
Sure.
much. Discussion on that? All in favor?
Yes.
Carried. Good, thanks. So now it's a motion that committee rise and report.
Move the committee rise and report. Move the committee rise and report.
Thank you, Councillor Lemon. All in favor? Good, carried. Thank you. Number 15, resolution adopting proceedings of committee in the whole.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dodd, that the action taken committee of the whole in considering public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business be confirmed by this council.
And all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Number 16, notice of motions.
None.
There's none. Thank you. Number 17, new business by resolution.
None.
There's none. Number 18, bylaws, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dobbs, that bylaws number 2015-009, 010, 015, sorry, 011, 012, and 013 be passed and enacted.
And all in favor?
Thank you.
That's carried. Thank you. We've completed our business for the night, so we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Good meeting.